Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. For months, Trump defenders have alleged that Robert Mueller's investigation is tainted with partisan politics. They've noted, for example, the strikingly high percentage of prosecutors on Mueller's team who are also major Democratic donors. The president himself has frequently echoed these charges, implying that the investigation is a partisan witch hunt concocted by his enemies to overturn last fall's election results, basically a coup. We haven't joined that chorus. Prosecutors, like military officers and surgeons, are trained to rise above their own politics in the service of duty, and most of them do that. In the absence of hard evidence to the contrary, it seemed wise to give this investigation the benefit of every doubt and wait for the outcome. We're Americans. We believe in the fair application of justice. We think that's what normally happens. Well, unfortunately, it's getting harder to maintain that faith. 2 days ago, news broke that a key figure in the Mueller investigation, a longtime FBI official named Peter Strzok, had been removed from his job for sending highly political text messages to his mistress, who's another FBI official. Apparently, those texts attacked President Trump and expressed affection for Hillary Clinton. Now, ordinarily, this would not rate a headline. Even career government officials are allowed to have political views. But this is no ordinary moment. Peter Strzok is at the very center of the two most politicized Justice Department cases in a generation. Strzok was, first of all, deeply involved in the investigation of Hillary Clinton's private email server last year. At the conclusion of that investigation, it was apparently Strzok who changed the FBI's description of what Hillary did from grossly negligent to extremely careless. Now, the first description is a crime, the second merely a blunder. So, in effect, Peter Strzok exonerated Hillary Clinton in the middle of a presidential campaign. But then he kept going. Strzok went on to sign the document, the official document that opened an investigation into Russian meddling in the election. The very same investigation the Hillary campaign was calling for at the time, the one that has now completely overwhelmed the Trump presidency. And if that wasn't enough, it was also Peter Strzok who, according to news accounts this afternoon, oversaw the FBI's interviews in January with General Mike Flynn at the White House, the ones that resulted in Flynn pleading guilty to felony charges on Friday. Apparently, Flynn had no idea he was being interviewed, and that would explain why he didn't have a lawyer present. If true, that would qualify as trickery. It would be unethical. Again, like Zelig, Peter Strzok in the middle of it. So you can see why Strzok's politically charged text to his mistress might matter at this point. What exactly did Strzok say in those texts? We still don't know the answer to that because, for reasons it will not even explain, the FBI won't tell Congress. So all the way back in August, the House Intelligence Committee sent a subpoena to the FBI asking for, among other things, information on why Peter Strzok was removed from Mueller's team. But instead of replying, the FBI simply stonewalled and said nothing. Well, that's not just infuriating, it's unconstitutional because the FBI is not its own government. It's a single agency within the executive branch of our federal government. It's accountable to, among others, the United States Congress, and therefore accountable to voters. Keep in mind, nobody elected Peter Strzok to anything. You elect members of Congress to keep people like Peter Strzok in line. Now, when people like Peter Strzok decide that Congress has no power over them, they're giving you the finger, and they're threatening democracy. That should not be allowed. And yet, amazingly, it's common. It happens literally all the time in Washington. Last summer, for example, Congress sought basic information about the infamous Trump dossier. Did the FBI pay for it or part of it? Did FBI agents believe the contents or use them to drive their Russia investigation? These are basic and central questions, and yet the FBI just ignored them. They didn't feel like answering. And they rarely do. Back in 2015, two Islamic extremists attempted to shoot up a Muhammad cartoon contest in Garland, Texas. Remember that? Later, it emerged that an undercover FBI agent knew the two shooters personally, and had even egged them on to, quote, tear up Texas. That agent even traveled with the terrorists to the scene at Garland, was present right before the attack, and tried to flee as it began. It's hard to believe that actually happened in America, but it did happen. You'd probably like to know why it happened, wouldn't you? Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin would like to know. He's repeatedly asked the FBI to explain why it shielded terrorists, how it could have failed to stop the shooting that happened later. And yet he still doesn't know. Senator Johnson's requests repeatedly have been stonewalled by the FBI. A year before that, in 2014, Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma asked the Justice Department information about the gun that the Tsarnaev brothers used to kill a police officer right after the Boston bombing. He never received an answer to that question. We could go on. There are many examples of this, but the point is clear. The FBI is out of control, and not just in the Trump investigation, but much more broadly. An agency charged with enforcing the law clearly considers itself above the law, and that's a threat to you and